Hey everyone, welcome to the latest edition of the AI DIY podcast. In this conversation today, me and Keith sit down with Stephen Orr, known by colleagues as Big Beat. Stephen shares his journey from Wall Street to founding his new startup, Quasar Markets, a platform aimed at democratizing financial data and integrating AI into investing theses. He discusses the challenges of a fragmented FinTech data ecosystem, the importance of mentorship and learning from people that you admire, and the future of AI in finance and how it's going to impact us all, and what democratized access to financial markets data is really going to mean for all of us. And this session emphasized the need for accessible data, the role of technology in shaping market dynamics, the way these LLMs are going to influence the way that we think about investing. This is one of my favorite conversations that we've ever had on the podcast. I'm so glad you're here. And I really welcome your comments and any feedback you might have. But for now, here's Stephen Orr from Quasar Markets.
2 decades ago, I was walking on Wall Street, and I wasn't really paying attention. I was trying to, but Apple's earnings were coming out, and I said, "Oh shit, Apple had a big beat." And I looked up, and the sign said that we were recording, and the red light was on, and I had these big bay windows to the studio. And I looked out, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm getting fired. The FCC is going to be up me." And I walk out, and people—it's like a scene of a movie, man. People were clapping and laughing, and they're standing on top of their desks. And the CEO, one of my best friends, H.L. Van Arnhem, comes out and goes, "Your new nickname is Big Beat." And so I kind of ran with that. And I have a specific way. I mean, it's big and beat, and there's no space and 2 capital B's. So sometimes even now my clothes have Big Beat in it now. So it's like, I guess I run with the branding. So I love it. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I love what you're all about. I love the energy. Tell us a little bit about, is it Quasar Markets or how do you pronounce it? Tell people what you're working on right now.
Yeah, I'm the CEO and founder of Quasar Markets, right? And the word quasar itself means a bright star. It's such a heavy star that the gravity is so big that it actually attracts other stars. And so the idea was I wanted to build the Amazon of FinTech, meaning the problem in FinTech is it's very fragmented. You may have a great company with great charts, or you have great news, but there's not really a place that has everything. And if you're like me, I'm surrounded by all sides of me of charts that I really, really wanted to have a place to build all of that and build Web3 and AI. And now the technology is there. And so, yeah, we did that. So we built the whole thing.
Awesome. Awesome. And what really inspired you to take on that challenge? As I understand what Quasar is doing, if you imagine 1,000 tools across the fintech space and, even let's say million different data sources, for example, now in AI, bringing that into a platform, what's your vision? What's the future that you're trying to bring to life with it?
The vision right now is very simple. And I'm going to boil it down for you. The problem that we see right now is that so many people have so many different products doing so many different things, and they're all cool, but they're all stuck in all their ecosystems, right? What if I could build something that didn't get you stuck in an ecosystem? Amazon's a great product for that, right? And the 60% of the products that they sell on Amazon are their products, right? Jeff Bezos' greatest idea was putting books on the internet in one platform so you could buy books, physical books. Well, that hurt Barnes and Noble, but didn't really hurt anybody else. So he changed the game, and he said, "Look, if I want to put your product into my platform, and as you do that, and you're not up to my speed for, like, say, technology, I want to build a backend for that." So it's SaaS. So I have a great partnership in Kiwi Tech to help other companies also grow their products out, so that they can focus on the marketing of it, so that they can focus on the building of their product and not just on the focus of everything, right? So a lot of people don't have it. I have that background. I call it the pedigree, right? I have the background in TV. I have the background in media. I have the background in fintech. I have the background in sports. I have the background in government and in the highest levels. So what if I could take all of that knowledge and boil it down for everybody? And one thing that I found out was that the world, and many, many years ago, 3 decades ago, the world, everything matters, right? So what if I could take all this data in every different language so that a person in the United States could understand what people in Japan were thinking and looking at, and the person in Australia could understand what people in China were looking at? What if I could shrink the world just a little bit faster, a little bit better, so that we understood what's going on? The problem is I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to look at the Chinese markets, but most people don't do that. They don't know how to roll over and get up out of bed and go, okay, oh, China's good. The Nikkei is up in Japan, whatever the exchange is. And that affects our exchange. Or I said this to the Keith earlier, look, hey, the two times that affects the markets, sports, very simple. The first one is during March Madness. People watch basketball games and don't trade, so the volume goes way down. The second,
Right. They're all gambling on something else.
exactly
Yeah.
right. They're watching basketball or in Super Bowl, right? Super Bowl time. They're all getting there in the football, right? They're all getting their fantasy together, and they're doing that. They're not paying attention to the markets, and you'll see the lower volume happens. Or a good example of that, weather. We saw weather, how that affects travel, right? So airline stocks got hit. Weather affects growing for ag, right? All of a sudden now you've got a whole other level of equities that people weren't trading before, now that they are. So a good example of that would be cocoa futures, right? I was trading cocoa futures based on the fact that El Nino was coming across the waters, and one thing I didn't know was that there was a geopolitical issue going on in the Ivory Coast. My AI caught that. So these are the kind of things that I wanted to do. But that's not fair that I have all that info, right? It's not fair that I have data, right? And yes, I'm surrounded by screens. Yes, I've spent millions of dollars building a platform, but I want to be able to give that to the whole world for free. How do I do that? Well, the more people that are on the platform, I understandable. And I want to make it where that the user is not the product. That's the problem. A lot of these places become the product. If you're on platforms, you're not charged for trading. Guess what? You're the product. So I want to create a place that you're not the product. And we've done that too as well.
And so I'm curious, how do things like prediction markets come into your sort of worldview around like the way that people engage with financial markets? Like, give me your like two sentences on like how you see prediction markets kind of coming into this fold as well. I'm just curious.
Yeah, we already are partnered with Kalshi. I love that. Prediction markets are really good, right? I think what the problem is that when you start to get the mind, the psychology of that trader, does it become a gambling mentality? And the answer is no. I don't believe in that. I believe in investing. I don't believe in gambling. Look, I have a Hard Rock on my phone, and every once in a while, I don't have a problem with that. But when it becomes part of the psychology of how you invest, that's wrong, and it shouldn't be on the same platform, right? It should be in a platform like ours, right? So you can see that data, that you can understand if you're predicting who the president's going to be or how the next bill in Congress is going to happen. That does affect the markets. If a bill coming in for, let's say, for example, we just saw PMI data, manufacturing data, right? So if I saw a bill coming in that's going to help John Deere and it's going to help Caterpillar, I want to know that because that's going to help the stock price, and that's great investing because I'm seeing the future a little clearer, right?
Hmm.
I'm not a person that understands the politics, right? I do personally. I grew up in it. I got 2 degrees in it. But an average person doesn't, right? If you're a Seattle dentist, that person does not understand politics in DC. I want to make it easier for that person to understand the politics behind it. I want them to understand the data behind it, why congressional approval is needed for this bill, why the president can do these things, but not just in the United States. I want to be able to see it in Australia, in Japan, in Germany, in Switzerland, in Brazil. Are those bills affecting it? Are we seeing a bill that they need rare earth issues? China. So when that happened, I was buying Caterpillar and Deere stock. But when I found that okay, there's going to be some abatement, China's going to get back on board. We're going to be friends again. Guess what? We didn't need those rare earths buildings, so I shorted the stock. I won 2 weeks before it happened. Right? I knew that because I knew the bills coming in. I knew how it was happening in China. So that's the kind of things that I want to build. But it's not fair for me to have all that data. This year alone, I'm up 222% in my brokerage accounts, in my trading accounts, without using options. That's safer, right? So I want to know why was I able to buy silver at 19.50 when everybody else has been buying it at 40 and $50 an ounce, and I just sold my silver because I think
Hmm.
Trump is in, right? Oh no, there's so much Twitter's out there and so much crazy news. Oh no, we're going to go higher. I gave my thesis at 1950. Here's why I think silver is going higher. There's not enough silver to cover paper. There's not enough silver to understand the solar panel market. There's not enough silver to cover the lithium market, right, for EVs. Well, I now know that EVs aren't selling as well. I know the solar panels aren't selling as well. And guess what? Well, we've hit pretty much a high. So yesterday I dumped all of my silver at 58 at the high. right? I knew that weeks in advance. I prepared for that, sold my physical, sold my paper off a week ago, and I'm happy, right? Now silver's coming back down. It may go higher, but great. But I made 187% return on something that I just owned and put it away and didn't do anything with it, right? Now I have a cleaner desk. I don't have so much silver on my desk. So I'm happy
Yeah,
about
less
that.
silverware in the basement, right?
On
Yeah.
behalf of the people of Colorado, man, you should keep your silver.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're gonna be a silver miner, Keith. I'm looking for that, man. Go to the
I'm
pitchfork.
trying to make them boom here, man. I don't want silver mines to come back.
Yeah. So, Stephen, I did do a little bit of backgrounding. So, my next question, I think, kind of builds on this that, Keith and I both having been tangentially or intimately involved in FinTech. Keith, helped automate escrow accounts for community banks, did a lot of banking, student loan integration,
Love that.
SAT test prep, lots of interesting stuff in his past. And we talk a lot, in our work at Black Flag about how AI is just going to transform finance. People are optimizing betting strategies with AI, they're optimizing investing strategies. You see things like autopilot's Pelosi tracker is very popular as kind of like the set it and forget it, dollar cost averaging type strategies. More people are getting access to the markets at its core and with more data, like you're talking about. And I really appreciate your kind of education bent and some of your background and like what you did during COVID with your text groups and also what you're doing with Quasar's like education hub. I looked at very smart, very cool play. I completely agree with what you're doing. And I like how you've likened AI's progress to innings, right, in baseball. And I want to talk about that a little bit. So, Keith has this lovely quote where he's like, if all LLMs, were to just freeze in the versions they're in, we would have a decade of software development to still do just by all the wins that we've had.
Decades.
And so, in terms of algorithmic trading in the market, AI's relationship, what inning are we in today? Where do you see it? What's the next inning look like?
That's a great question, Eli. And thanks, Keith. I love the things you guys did in the past. Look, when I was in Davos at WEF and talking about AI 3 years ago, people looked at me like I was another planet. They didn't really understand what I was talking about. Yeah, we get the AI. Okay, we see Sam and Sam's
Our friends and family thought we were crazy for quitting our jobs.
I can tell you great stories about my mom and dad thought
Yeah.
I was crazy when I said cars would drive themselves eventually. They do. Is that,
Well,
when
we've also said crazy things before.
Oh, I don't think there's anything crazy right now. I think the things that we can't even think about the next level of things for a lot of things. But in this space of AI, you're absolutely right. If LLMs and NLMs were stopping right now, we would have decades of data in order to build right now. The problem is that it's not keeping up with what our ideas are, right? We're just catching up. So if you think about it in baseball terms, AI 3 years ago, I've been talking about AI for 15 years. So when I said that eventually you will be able to talk to your watch and you'll be able to understand, I wanted to be able to understand what was being said. Sometimes when we have conversations with people, we don't understand the conversation. So explain the context of what they were saying, right? Should I get mad about what they said? Should I be happy? How should I understand the process? And when we talk about it from an interspect of international languages, right? What were they saying to me? What was the president of that country saying? In the past, we've had countries talk to each other, presidents of countries going, they didn't understand what they were saying to each other. Right? Wars were started over that.
Yeah.
What if we could shrink that down? And so I think that we're talking about the inning that we're in. We're not even in the first pitch. We're in the warm up, right? We now see that there's a baseball game. So here's the baseball game. Here's what you can do. You can talk to your machine and the machine can give you data based on the databases that they have. And if they don't have the databases installed in the machine, then they'll go out and find the database, and that's where hallucination happens. So all of a sudden now you've got a whole other level. We need guardrails, right? So there's a whole other level of security and issues that haven't even happened to get us into the first inning. So let me go back in time a little bit and talk about it from the dot-com era, right? When we started first talking about the internet, for those of us who lived it during when we didn't even have internet, we thought this was great. And I said, we're in the first inning of it when we had first baud, right? 300 baud, 900 baud, 600 baud. I can talk about 1800 baud. I can talk about if it was in the schools. I went to the University of Illinois. And then DARPA and how the internet exploded, right? And then I was in DC at the time working for the White House, and we had a thing called Errol's Internet, where you brought the internet to the average person. We had dial-up at 9600 baud and then 1428A, and we were so happy at 56K, and then we're shotgunning modems. We're not even the point of 14.4 yet, right? So we're not even the point where we're right now is seeing websites. You're just now, when you talk about OpenAI or Perplexity or Gemini, you're just now seeing how data will be brought. Today, we book air flights, we look at baseball scores online, and now we're doing prediction models. That's just the very, very beginning. Think about when I get into my car, I want the car to play the music that I want to hear. Right today, you got to punch a button and you got to touch buttons. I have a BMW, so I can use my fingers. But that's cool. But wait till the machine becomes part of you. Wait till the things that you become, that you have, wearables like your glasses or your watch or your AirPods, become part of us. The world just shrank. Right now, I don't have to get a translation software. I don't have to pull out my little Duolingo book or whatever. Now it's just going to be part of our life. And nobody just says, hey, I'm going to go on the internet today, right? We're not going to say, hey, you know what? Let me go check ChatGPT and tell me. The future is going to be, it's just going to be part of our world that we live in, right? We don't say, hey, I can't wait to go on the internet to find out what my email says. We say, hey, I'm going to check email real quickly, right? And see what it says.
I used to say that at like 13 when I was only allowed 1 hour of internet a night. And so you better believe at about 3:30 getting out of school, the only thing I could think about was the next chance I got to get plugged in. And now it's hard to imagine not being in the noise, not being
When
inundated with
X.com went
all.
down 3 weeks ago, the stock market's volume dropped by 10 times, right? Immediately, because people need the crutch. So the problem is, I now could not live without the internet. I literally couldn't do it. I live in Florida, right? Hurricanes suck because electronics go down, electricity goes down. It sucks, right? I've got batteries upon batteries upon batteries, so things go up. I've had FPL, Florida Power and Light, kind of my house going, why do you need all this energy? Because I need all this data. Why do you need all this? You don't need all this data. They come to the house. The internet guy comes to the house. Oh my gosh, I get it now, right? But I have an advantage. So I've said this in the past. The difference between the have and the have-nots financially have been how much money you have in the bank. But in the future, it's going to be how much access do you have the data? And when people ask me what companies are going to do well, it's very simple. I tell them Amazon, Facebook, CrowdStrike. Why? Because they already have the data on us. They already know how to use that. What do you mean by that, Big B? Well, guess what? Online spending for Black Friday and for now for Monday, Cyber Monday, went up 9.4% because AI was attached to their data. They knew how to retarget us their data. Hey, I looked at some pens. Guess what? I didn't buy that one. I looked for a laptop stand. I didn't buy the one I looked at, but they knew the one that I wanted because they knew how I had my setup. Guess what? They retargeted me based on my own AI. And guess what? I did buy. I bought a stand because they knew that. That's the difference in AI. And those companies will start to weed them out. Right? And that's the difference. And that's what AI is going to do. But in the future, AI is not going to need you to do inputs. AI is just going to say, hey, you know what? I want access to your Gmail. Hey, I want access to your data. You're going to go, yep, click, yes, click the box, yes, click, go. And because you're not going to get access to anything if you don't, right? So here we are.
Yeah.
They're now going to know our lives better than anybody. And guess what? No, Arnold Schwarzenegger is not going to come down naked and try to take over our world. We're not going to need that problem. But it is going to be at a point where we won't even know that AI is actually being part of our life. It'll just be so integrated that we'll just be living with it. We won't. And I heard the other day, I was telling this on another podcast saying, hey, if you don't learn AI, that you'll be left behind. No, that won't happen. Let me tell you something right now. People are losing jobs out there. And right now, we know this because a new study came out. 14% of the jobs in employment right now, not in the future, and right now can be replaced by AI. We're going to need to have Congress make a rule about that. They're not going to get involved. They're not going to stop the progress of technology. They don't want to be the person or the country that says no to AI. In fact, we have a president right now that says we want to be the country leader of AI. And we're starting to fall behind. If you don't believe that, literally, the head of AI for Apple just resigned because they can't keep up. We're going to have the head of AI won't even be a human. It'll probably be a computer that runs our next level of AI.
Yeah. So I like to think about like these type of speculative discussions and the classic three lenses of foresight, which I'm sure you're familiar with, are the possible outcome, the plausible outcome, which I think what you're describing is very plausible. Don't get me wrong. Like, and very possible.
I
But
think
the third lens that I like is actually preferable. And so when you think about, and I remember on a podcast I listened to last week as I was thinking about our discussion, I remember you talking, I think it was on like future signals. I forget the name of it, but you described that like society may be becoming too dependent on technology. And like when I hear you describe the future in the realm of finance specifically, and Keith, I'd love to invite you to chime in and then we'll let Steven close this topic. Are we worried about our reliance on these algorithms, automation, what the large language model kind of obfuscates? What is really the preferable speed, efficiency, of course, AI driven investing? What is preferable, Keith, from your mind based on what Steven's sharing? And then, Steven, I really want to know, like, what are you manifesting? What are we bringing to life with Quasar? Keith, do you have any thoughts? And then we'll let Steven chime in.
I do. I have too many. I'm trying to sort them out.
Come on, Keith,
Yeah.
let's go, baby. I love this.
Yeah. So I mean, I would say like I really, really like pretty much everything that you've said, which I don't say often. You can go back and look. I usually have some sort of critique.
We're very opinionated.
I also feel like I've been spending a lot of time in AI and have landed in a similar headspace to where you are. And so what I'm most curious about is like how this is all being received by people. Because to me, it's like you're saying things like, oh, like like even just look at your app, right? It's like the app kind of does everything, which 5 years ago I would have said was a silly idea, right? But it's not anymore. Because to me,
It's
it's
not.
like the access to data point you're making is the most clear in my head that people are missing, which is like the fact that you built something, it's like, fucking good for you, man. Like you did it now.
Thanks, man.
Right. But like if you have access to the data or like an opinion, or you can like, I don't know, like some sort of insight that you have or that you provide, and like by de facto, like telling people what to pay attention to is like very, very relevant now in a way that I think, I don't know, like it makes sense to me that like you could roll all these things out. And like my question more is like, how is this being received? Are you moving way faster than you have before on the technology side? And what does that actually look like when you hit the market?
People ask me that question. That's a great question, Keith. Thanks, Eli. Look, we live in the future of, Mark Zuckerberg. We live in the future of Elon Musk. We live in the future of Jeff Bezos. Why is that? Because they're the ones that wrote the software, right? We live in their future of how they want their future to look. If you don't want your future to look like dystopian world of Stranger Things, I just watched Stranger Things, then maybe we need to think about how we want to do that, right? And so I thought about that in my perspective, that look, the one thing that Elon Musk, and I like Elon, don't get me wrong, I like Elon, but the one thing he wants is to be a trillionaire, right? The one thing that Mark Zuckerberg wants is to have all the data on you so that he can understand and have you all connected. And he understands that side of it, right?
Right.
And
No,
they
no moral judgments there. It's like they're fiduciarily responsible to make themselves
and
millionaires. Yeah.
Bezos wants to sell it to you, right? So those three guys have got it down to almost to a science, right? But the problem is I don't think that they should be the only ones to have access to that. In the finance world, the person that mostly had access to that data was Michael Bloomberg, right? And why did Michael Bloomberg why was he able to do all the things he does? Because he had the data. And people don't understand. I like Michael Bloomberg. I actually love the guy. I voted for him in New York when he was mayor, when he ran. But it's not fair that they have the data only. It's not fair in a way, right? We should be able to democratize that data. And then, of course, the next question everybody asks about is, well, if everybody has all the data about everything, isn't that kind of defeating the purpose? No, it's actually not, because it's not. It's what they do with that. Psychology is still involved in the markets. I look at the chocolate market different than you look at the chocolate market. When I was asked not too long ago about what should we be interested in, I said, I was on Schwab Network, and I said, Nicole Pentelides asked me a question. And I said, I like Eli Lilly. Well, why like Eli Lilly? Because I think that weight loss drugs are going to change the world. Well, how do you know that? Well, I have access to the data telling me how many people have it. Yeah, you know what? You're right. My friend's on that. Oh yeah, you know what? That psychology changed because I had that data. I was able to talk about that data, and then they were able to put that into numbers. Eli Lilly stocks exploded, right? I was at a dinner one time in New York City. Steve, give us a stock that you think will go through the roof. And I'm at this dinner with some 14 billionaires on the same dinner table. I said Palantir. I thought they were going to literally laugh me off the table.
Like,
And I
yeah,
said,
Palantir
no. I said, you guys
too.
know Palantir, right? PLTR. Stock
Big
was,
reverse, like, yeah.
the stock was at $35. Okay, Big B. Tell us why Palantir is going to do well. Because they have all the contracts to the government. And the president's going to approve all those contracts because Pete Hegseth is his friends with XYZ. And he knew the friends, and he was friends with Alex Karp. And I said, I know this. You don't know this. So what if I give you that data? This was back during the early days of Quasar Markets. Well, I don't know. The next dinner that I went to, that same place, same restaurant, Electric Lemon, they weren't saying that they all had bought the stock, right? And they understood. Because why? Because they couldn't understand the curve of why Palantir. They couldn't put the dots together. My machine puts the dots together for them in a way that I didn't know. I know Alex Karp. I know government contracts. I know the president's staff. I know what's happening, but I wanted my AI to put all that together and clean it up for me, right? And it did that. But when it went at $220, I went back on the show and said, look, it's too expensive. The stock is not worth this. NVIDIA is not worth this. Guess what? Peter Thiel sold his stock in NVIDIA, but the average person didn't have access to that, and they were still buying NVIDIA at 220. And I said on the air, it's too expensive. Today the stock's down, right? Now we're at 170-ish, right? I knew that pre-existing because I was ready for that. Right. So when I talk about the next level of things, when I talked about cars driving themselves, the first thing my mom and dad asked, well, where's the gas pedal? Well, Mom, actually, you won't need gas because it'll be electric, and we won't need to it'll be a push button, and it'll probably be your fingerprint, because that's the problem, that people can't see the future. They don't have that vision because their vision is 2020 about what they see today. How do I want to see the future? And Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos sees the future because they're excluding those steps, right? Palmer Luckey saw the future for wearables and sold it to Facebook because now he sees another future, which was drones. We didn't have drones 10 years ago in the average person's hands. Well, how is drones going to help us in the future? Now Amazon's going to have it where they deliver packages to you. But that wasn't really forethought, right? So all of a sudden, we've got a whole different world and way of thinking about the future. So when I say, here's my vision for the future, people go, well, how do we get there? I don't understand the steps. That's the difference. And the steps right now are being created by the AI gods right now, the people writing the software. So, and we saw very clearly when Cloudflare went down the other day, just how much the market, when AWS, Amazon went down, the markets went down. The world went down. People stopped everything. CME went down the other day. Guess what? That affected the markets. So we know that the problem right now is not just writing software for AI, it's also energy. We're going to need 10 times the amount of energy. So much so that 3 Mile Island is being reopened. People could not fathom 3 Mile Island being reopened. Not only is 3 Mile Island being reopened, but Microsoft is buying 3 Mile Island.
Yeah, I'd like to scream this from the rooftops if you're already not. This is like something that
totally I'm screaming there, right? Yeah.
Like they're planning on like generating more power in 5 years in Texas than Texas has ever generated in the history of ever in a year. Like
when people ask me the question about that, about finance, where should I go? What should I say? Well, Texas. Why Texas? Low taxes. They've got sports, so people are happy, right? Now you've got a place where it's where you can live because you can have a bigger house because the land is cheap. You have plenty of energy. Why? Because they're burning off natural gas. They just want the oil.
The natural gas is with the Permian Basin there, man. I think that shows two things. I think it shows like there's plenty of gas there. And if that's a moral issue for you, there's plenty of huge infrastructure and people.
I'm all about nat gas. Let's go nat gas. Yes.
Right. Like they're building. I drove by the computer in Abilene because my wife's family lives out there, and I was like, I'm gonna go drive by it. I gotta see what this looks like. And it's like, dude, they're putting $1 billion ground in Abilene, Texas, which is like the middle of nowhere, man.
Abilene, Texas. I mean, it's going to be all over Texas. I mean, right now, oil
No,
prices.
yeah. Well, they put it in Abilene's where the supercomputer is, and then they'll be putting it all over the place. But like, it's very much tied to like where they get their own natural gas sites.
Lots of land, natural gas, all of that stuff is there. The crypto world, low taxes, Dallas Cowboys. I mean, I'm a Redskins fan, so but it's working for them, right? And I understand that Florida's going to be another place. It's not going to work for California. Silicon Valley, in order to
I don't even know about Florida, man. I would bet my house on West Texas being where we
I
put.
agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah,
it's the perfect spot in every way. Like you drive, it's the only place where you drive through and you're like, people here have a lot of land and they're looking to make money off this land.
And they want more land.
That's right. A data center.
I mean, when you take a look at these of just how big the data center campuses are going to be, I mean, portions of it are finished, but I would not recommend many people go to Abilene, but driving by this sumbitch is something.
And all there are open fields and fields more that would be perfect for data centers.
And as they build these data centers out,
it's wild.
These major corporations are going to start moving into them because they don't want their data to be based on a landline somewhere, right? I don't care how fast you can move the data.
They'll take it in the data center next to where we keep the B50.
That's why the NASDAQ and the stock market, their data center is in New Jersey, right? That's why the NASDAQ has moved a huge exchange down to Texas for this very reason, right? Land, people, and all the things I've just said, right? This is just one sector. The clothing industry is going to move totally there. Why? Because you're not going to need people to build clothes anymore. You're going to see, okay, you know what? I don't like this shirt. I want this color. You're not going to have 50,000 of one color of a shirt. You're going to say, I want this. Ask Nike. They're already building Nike shoes in the color that you want, the way that you want it, how you want it. People are going to be very, very, it's going to be detrimental to people that build lots and lots of one thing. Right? It's going to be very, I mean, I'm looking at it right now here's a good example. When you look at cars, red, white, black car, there's only a few colors, right? What about the person that wants the polka dotted blue color car and make their own color car, right? You either have to paint it the way you want or a third party. That won't happen in the future. There'll be machines where your car, you pick the color out you want, and they don't care what color you want. It'll just be whatever color you want or whatever things you want in it. And it won't be, oh, well, you can only have, here's your 5 things to choose from. It'll be 5 million things to choose from. And there won't be a person that'll be the person that goes, okay, inputting it into a computer. The AI will say, Eli, hey, Keith, your car is getting older. You want a new car? Guess what? I found a really good car in Texas. They're going to make it for you cheaper today than it will be tomorrow. We're already seeing that with airlines, right? You already know when the prices go up or down, right? And there's going to be surge pricing. And that's the kind of car you're going to have. And you're going to enjoy it because it's your car based on you. And you're not going to care what anybody else thinks about your car, right? Because you live in it. And it won't be a car that you drive. It'll be a car. So what goes in that car? It'll be games and video games. And it'll be, Oculus and tied into it. You'll be playing Monopoly with each other, your family. You'll be watching movies together on the way to whatever thing you're going to go to.
Right. Well, to me, it's like a huge thing. And I don't know, this is kind of tangential, but just like during like the agricultural revolution, which I think is like the most applicable to this, right? It led to like, I tie that a lot to the fact that people don't know that there's seasons anymore for like strawberries. But it's not because some fucking guy's making strawberries in like the middle of this way. I actually don't even know the season.
I live near Plant City, so I got the strawberry thing down. I got it.
Whatever it is, that was what I'm saying is like it's created the need, like the increase in agricultural output created markets beyond belief. And I think
you're absolutely right. The way that we live today is based on farming and agriculture. We live right now in a world that says daylight savings time was built around the agriculture, right? So the kids could go farm. We built the school year around farming because the kids needed to be out of the school so that during the summer months they could do the planting and do the harvesting. That's why schools have this 9-month deal. Kids should go to school year round, to be honest with you. But I know kids probably won't agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I totally hear you. Grew up in Texas, so I met people that actually have this problem.
Right. Like, we don't have that problem anymore. And in the future,
that's why we have the 9 months.
I'm from Illinois. I'm originally from Southern Illinois. I mean, I understand the growing seasons of corn and crops and soybeans and of sorghum and how pork belly and cattle, live cattle, feeder cattle, all that works. Guess what? Those are markets that in the future people will be trading. We don't trade futures as much. I love futures. It's how I grew. I grew up on futures. But in the future, pun intended, people will be trading on that. When I went to Benzinga, they asked me what the hottest market will be. And I said, in the future, the hottest market will be options. What's an option? Right? The average person didn't know what an option was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Today,
right.
who doesn't trade options, right? Who doesn't trade zero DTs? I don't, because I hate them. They're stupid. But my buddy Henry at SIBO will disagree with me, right? Because they made them a lot of money. But that's how I'm talking about the future. The future is created by the next step, a level, and it will change how we live, where we live, and what direction that we live in. Meaning, you know what? People ask me all the time, where should I move to? Texas. Why Texas? Because of the things we just talked about, right? Because farming is leaving Illinois. Why? Because John Deere and Caterpillar don't need the farmers anymore. Why? Because a machine does it all for them. The AI knows when to put the fertilizer in the ground. And right now, fertilizer today is 100 times better than fertilizer 10 years ago, and 1,000 times better. And unfortunately, GMOs now grow. I mean, we now have pigs that are outsized pigs and chickens that are not normal, and we don't need a billion chickens. Now we just need less chickens because it's feeding more people. So,
yeah, this is part of my argument for why I think West Texas is where we're going to put all the data centers. Is because their farms aren't as productive as the farms in other.
Now there is a problem with West Texas.
I can think of a lot, but I don't want to.
Heat. Well, yeah, heat. Right?
Well, actually, I would argue that heat is not as bad there as it would be in like the coastal part of Texas, yes, where there's going to be. I mean, the erosion on a data center in Houston seems like I can't believe that there's a ton of those.
Yeah, I think the dust is actually the bigger problem.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like dirt
filtration.
Dust. Yeah, and I would actually argue the original Dust Bowl was caused by basically once they had agricultural equipment that could farm things. They're like, where the fuck's the cheapest land in America? It's out by Lubbock, Texas, if you're wondering usually.
Gotcha.
That's like where it was.
I like this podcast because I just learned something.
Right? Yeah, they all wandered out there, they dug it up, and then it blew, and it wasn't really a huge problem for America until the dust blew into New York City, and then they were like, what are y'all doing out here? And then
I read the Grapes of Wrath, John Steinbeck, but I mean,
yeah, and then John Steinbeck wrote Grapes of Wrath, and now there's just a bunch of land out there that no one can use, that's like in grasslands, because they overfarmed it. But that happened because they thought that made up the difference, right? But there's still more fertile areas. I don't know, but I feel like I'm worried about a similar effect in AI, where it's what are the markets that are built on the stuff?
But what if AI could survey the land and tell you a better place to do it economically, efficiently? AI will be, right. AI will be like, hey, you know what?
AI can scan the land and tell you Iowa is the place to do it.
I mean, look, think of it like this: there's old Walmart buildings everywhere, right, that are vacant. Well, you know what? You should put an open AI data center in that because it's empty and the structure's already there. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, right? But let the AI machines tell us better. That make us more efficient and spend more time doing that than
well, I also think there's an efficiency aspect to it, but there's a very real aspect, which is I grew up where my dad worked for Lockheed Martin, and I remember going to a party for his work as a middle schooler. I was old enough to say, this is weird, Dad. And they had a banner up that was we have a facility in all 50 states. And my dad was like, oh yeah, will they do that so they have one in every congressional district? And if you look, Washington has an office in every congressional district. And there is an aspect of the data centers, right? If they if they get blasted to do one because they have to in Iowa because they have to win, that's a part of the issue as well, right?
And Lockheed Martin knew that, right? So they could influence elections.
And they're just now losing that grip, if at all.
Because why? Because we all have access to the Nancy Pelosi tracker, right?
Yeah,
we know how important both.
Well, yeah, I would argue it's more Peter Thiel said it's my turn.
Sure, of course, yeah. And I like Peter. Peter and I know Peter, but I will say this.
Well, I have no critique of him doing that. I think that's what he's doing, though, and I don't think that's.
Of course, I don't know that about it. I mean, the rich people only do one thing: make more money, right? And the only way to do that is more data. They need to understand the back end of how things work, right? When you're trying to put a business in somewhere, you need to understand the demographics, you need to understand the business model, and you need to be able to understand the next level. If I get, how big is your moat around your business? And so right now, those kind of things are already done by AI now. You don't need to use, hey, write me up a business model. Hey, write me up a plan so that I understand. And now I'm going to market with this plan. So what I want to see is the person that would not normally have access to this kind of data should. we should not limit this data just because your dad worked at Lockheed Martin, right? You shouldn't have this because my parents, my mom was a pharmacist. Why should I have all the biotech data, right? I should be able to democratize that. But I also want to learn things that I didn't know, like the new Dust Bowl going on in Abilene, right? So guess what? That data I'm going to shove into my AIs and make sure that I understand that Dust Bowl situation, right? And that's the kind of knowledge that I want. And it's not just based on AI or computers. It's also based on the psychology of this commonality of talking about it with people. Because right now we're in a situation right now where people don't like talking to each other. I heard this the other day. Well, how do you get your news? Podcasts. Wait, you got all of your news from a podcast? You didn't listen to CNN or Fox? Nope. I don't care about that. Okay. How do you know their data is right? Because I know they're getting their data from CNN and Fox Business. I know I am, right? I got CNBC, I got Bloomberg up here, and I've got.
No, yeah, a lot of people do podcasts for sure. Because to me, it's like I don't know. I know we're on a podcast, so I'm not.
No, that's what I'm saying.
But it's
So
like
keep the podcast and bring our knowledge into the podcast and go to. So when I was in Japan, Tokyo, I went to go meet with the head of Monex, and he said, and they would show the train station. The president, the CEO, he goes, Stephen, you're absolutely right. Okay. And he says, we don't need to be the one marketing all the time. We need to go where people are. So if they're on podcasts where you guys are, awesome. Let's bring the data to you guys. And I'll give you guys access to Quasar Markets. There you go. I'll give you guys a year access to Quasar Markets.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
Dude, I will use the hell of it because this is awesome because like
now my AI bill just went up, I think. Yeah, but I like that. That's
good. To me, man, it's like it's not just like the access to information. Like I've always read like The Economist, and like I'm the nerd that goes to the back and like looks at the tables, right? Because it'll give me something to talk about at some point. Maybe not right now.
But take The Economist, rip the pages out, PDF it, shove it up to an AI, and I already know.
No, exactly, shove it up to an AI. But now it's like instead of me going on a podcast and talking about the tables, I could have like people rely on AI for a similar function that they already rely on.
I think the opposite. I think people should rely on your podcast because now you're more knowledgeable about it. And not everybody's going to take the data of The Economist, and just like I said, now you have more knowledge. So disseminate that knowledge through your podcast because that's where they're at.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And then I think people pay basically for like the podcast they like or the people that they trust.
That's right. Yes, I agree.
Because like to me, over Thanksgiving, numerous family members approaching me about the beef prices in Argentina, and not a one of them really thought about what the fuck that meant. They all had different people brought it into
10 years ago, were people really asking you about Argentinian beef?
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying is it's like it's getting into their media and everybody's got the fact that everybody had their own opinion on Argentinian beef prices in this group of people I was with was crazy.
I have always said, and I always know, people ask me, Steve, you're really good at knowing when to sell your equities. How do you know that? I said, it's very simple. I believe in the shoe shine boy method, which is if you go way, way, way back, a reminiscent of a stock operator, Edward Lefebvre. When you hear stock tips from my Uber driver, you damn well bet you that stock I'm not going to own, right? Because that data is going to filter all the way down. By the time they get to it, everybody's into it. So people ask me all the time, why did you buy Bitcoin at $75 the first time? And I was like, well, because someone told me about it that was smarter than me. And Paul didn't. And Paul's like, hey, I need to talk to you about it. I didn't buy Bitcoin at the very second he told to buy it. I had to do my own homework on it. And when he started talking to me about it, it was around 80 cents. It wasn't until $75 that I buy it, right? And I felt stupid then. And it went to 19,000 and I sold, and everybody knows what happened there. That's why, I got lots of accolades for selling and creating the first, I guess, fell off.
But I totally live by that. Like I learned that too, like where it's like when you hear like your Uber driver sub it in. One time I heard a barber talking about crypto, and that was enough for me.
Done. Yeah.
No, this doesn't make any sense. I'm out of great clips.
I saw.
What are you talking about crypto?
I saw a podcast, and I was watching a TikTok of a guy that I definitely think is completely stupid in the markets. Began talking about silver, and I said, "Oh shit!" So I called my wife and said, "We got to go down and dump all my silver today," and we did. I got to get rid of it. This is it. 58.50 was the high. We may go higher, but I was like, you know what? I think it's done. I think if everybody now understands my thesis of why I bought silver, then maybe the deal is done. And that's with democratizing data, right? So that everybody has it at the same time. But guess what? The cool thing about it is Argentinian beef. Now, I've always said this. People in Japan know how to invest in the United States, but people in the United States don't really know how to invest in other countries.
No,
When we
no way.
get to that point where every country knows how to invest in every other country, and that gets democratized, that psychology is even bigger. We'll create a world now that I will be able to invest in Argentinian beef without having to go outside of my ecosystem or outside of that. I don't have to go open an account in Sao Paulo. All the things I have to do now won't be there. There'll be all kinds of ways, and Quasar Markets wants to be at the forefront where we bring their markets to our platform.
Totally. Yeah. You have to, there's a lot of civics education in America to make that work, but I hear you. Because the
But
data,
I think it's happening.
data there is what I'm saying is like, you don't have to have a guy on the ground in Tokyo to get the data you need to figure out what you need to do.
I was on the floor of the Nikkei, and I gave a speech not too long ago. I talked about that, right? And I said, look, and for me, in order for me to do this, I have to go to get the data from Quick, which is the equivalent of our Bloomberg here, and a lot of people don't know that. Quick is huge over there. Naming people over the United States that understand the Quick data, right? They don't know that. They don't know the news over there, right? When that becomes daily bread in our systems here, then all of a sudden that opens up the eyes of Japan. Right now, the only way most Americans can invest in Japan is through an ETF or an ADR. Right?
So let's stay on this point, because I actually had a question echoing. Yeah, I had a question echoing in my brain on this kind of note, where beyond like your conviction on this topic, I guess it's a two-parter. How is Quasar actually closing the gap on access to that kind of data? Like, if somebody hires Quasar, signs up for a year, like what job is it really performing for them? And then the second parter is like, besides things like the shoe shine or the newspaper boy, like principle, what other like principles or techniques are you using to like cut through the noise?
Well,
So I guess like,
I think that the key to that is very simple. And I think what I'll do is I'll just share my screen, right?
yeah, that'd be cool. I'm super interested.
And I'm going to pull up Quasar Markets itself.
And while you're pulling it up, I do want to share one thing briefly. The beyond the shoe shine boy principle, I have what I call the high school kid principle.
Okay.
Keith and I were working in a co-working space together back in 2016 on one of our early startups. And there was a young man, he could not have been more than 14 years old at the time. They came to us and said, buy Bitcoin, buy Monero, and buy Cardano. It was like, that's the way. And if we had listened to him and put $1,000 in Bitcoin at that time, we would be sitting on millions. So if youth are speaking up, emboldened and impassioned about something, it is worth a 20-year horizon to pay attention to. So that's my high school kid principle. If I get 5 high school kids saying, buy Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin, I actually am going to listen to that. I'm going to pay attention to that because they're in early. It's going to stick with them for a long time. So what other kind of, anecdotes or like nuggets?
You're totally right. Like, for example, when Bitcoin took that big sell-off not too long ago, I didn't get scared. I bought because I knew what was going to happen. And today we're back up, we're right back up, right? I wanted to give them that access. And so with Quasar Markets, I didn't want to just give them AI access, but I wanted to give them access. So for example, I've got several screens, right? You can go to any screen you want. Data, you already have news. You already have like the weekly crude oil numbers, right? I've got oil here and I've got oil, but it's literally as easy as moving widgets around. And I made it very fast. That's why I built it Web3. But if I want to understand here, I built it with the AI already into the system. So in this situation, you know what? I know oil affects France. So guess what? I have France TV sitting on the system. I have my watch list up and running, right? At the same time. But I also want to know what other people are asking. And you'll see on the side here, breaking news in Saudi Arabia. This person is asking it in English, but they might have been asking it in a foreign language, right? This guy is asking about what does this mean for retail traders? Putin ready to discuss in detail the U.S. plan for Ukraine. So I want to give it the audience, whether that's retail or institutions, the ability to attach those databases that you understand. So in this case, let's say I'm asking Google Civic, which is or news, or OFAC, which is who's getting kicked out of the U.S. markets, or in Fred. Let's go with Fred, and then let's go with NASDAQ data, so equities, right? Now, all of a sudden, I've asked an Edgar. I'm going to ask an Edgar question or a Fred question, and let's ask that question. So now I have actually applied those two databases, and a question I'm going to ask is, what does the latest PPI numbers mean for the stock market, right? Now I can do that with ChatGPT. I can do that with Perplexity. We have 18 AIs in our system, right? So if you're just using one AI to answer or you're plugging data into Perplexity, great. I love Perplexity. It's in here too. But that's not going to give me the answer. And I want a deep, dark answer to a deep, dark question, to a question I didn't even know to ask. So the machine is actually running serious databases. And now, yep. So there you go. I now know, I want to know from what PPI numbers. So it's telling me, it's going in it to the PPI numbers and giving me specific and telling me that, okay, I got to think about the latest PPI numbers and I need to know where the data comes from. So now I have asked the question of PPI, and here's where it came from. So I want to make sure, and I also want to get the time stamped, right? So now I know when it came from. So now you ask me, who do I replace? I'm replacing analysts on Wall Street. Now
Absolutely.
I want to know the questions I didn't even know to ask. What specific sectors are most impacted by changes in the PPI? All right, I'm going to ask that question. All of a sudden, it's sending me down the right. So now I'm being even more efficient, right? I'm not burning more data and burning up more electricity because I you know what? Out of these four things, this is really what I kind of wanted to know. I didn't even know I wanted to know that. How did it know that? Because it knew me. It knows that I'm a PhD level in economics, and all of a sudden, all right, so now I've asked a question, and now I'm going to ask, okay, here it is. Current price of stock, Apple. So now I've asked PPI, it's affecting Apple stock. Now I want to know how it's affecting it, the latest data. So all of a sudden,
just for example, if I pick some data sources, and maybe we could try this out, but I'm curious, like, I'm a big dollar cost averaging guy.
Me too.
Whether it's stocks, crypto, what have you. I buy on a recurring frequency, same amount every week. I don't mess with it. I don't pay attention to it. But what I do is set, limit sells if it meets, the target value from analysts. So if I buy it $40 under the target price, I'm always setting a limit sell if we hit the target price, just to, of course, reap some gains, at good times.
All right. So you like, you tell me that you like, I'll do it right here. You like Apple. So I'm going to do that. Now you'll see just how fast I built the platform out. I've added institutional news, right? And I'm going to add, you like that. And of course I like data. All the data's in here. So let's say, for example, ratios. So I'm going to create a ratios module. Now these two modules together, and I have to look at myself because I can't always see them. There we go. All right. So I'm going to save this widget as black flag. That's where we're at, right? All right. And I'm going to look up, you just said Apple. So I'm going to look up Apple News. All right. So there's all the Apple News coming up. There's all the Apple News, and I'll make it easy for everybody to see it. Goldman says Apple App Store spinning growth. Great. That's good. Apple price target's been raised. Great. All of a sudden, yeah, I can get all that news from somewhere else. Okay, Big Beat. You just said to me how you wanted to understand the Apple stock. So I built a machine that gave me ratios. All right. So now we talked about Apple. There's Apple. You look at any stock you want. I can also look at it from the perspective of charts and graphs and all the fun things that we normally. But here's what I want to know. I want to know the quick ratio of Apple. All right. So now I'm going to add it to my ratios. So the quick ratio of Apple is 0.5. All right. Well, that's great. But you know what? That's not really what I want to know. I want to know, let's take quick ratio and let's multiply it by the PE ratio. Now I've created a new ratio. And that new ratio, I can save. I can create a new ratio. So Eli, based on your thought process of what you're thinking about Apple, how you want to think about it, I can create my own ratios from that. And that's called our ratios module. No one else has that, right?
Yeah, that's cool. Because
I
use like ChatGPT.
I kind of want it with sports stats to prove why Jackson Dart's a good quarterback. He's crushing it.
What's the chance of quarterback
He
getting
raised
beat?
you up. He's the best at it.
I love that. And you guess what? I have sports data too, if you want sports data. So,
Okay, that's what I was asking. Yeah.
okay, yeah, easily done, right? I'm going to take this, I'm going to add widgets. I'm going to add a widget, and I'm going to take news, and I'm going to take sports news. So all of a sudden now I have all the sports news. There's a certain person. Now you notice how fast I made that. And you'll notice that as I did that, the machine automatically rearranges so that it fits.
That's cool.
Right? You haven't seen a machine that fast, right? Most of it have to make it work for themselves, right? And so I want to build it so that it was literally that easy. So let's say, for example, I've now added the sports data in here, and I'm going to blow it up a little bit. And we know, unfortunately, you are a Giants fan, and I'm still so sorry for you. But
It's okay. It's hereditary. We'll be fine.
so I'm going to pull up all of the Giants news for you. There, we'll get the detailed view there for you.
Did you guys see their kicker last night? It was the funniest thing I've ever seen on a football field. Their kicker tried to kick a field goal and missed, like the ball.
Field goal and
Like he tried to kick
He
it
kicked the
right like
ground.
Charlie
Yeah.
Brown missed, and
so if you'll notice that I'm not just pulling down some news, I'm pulling news down from every source, right? I'm not just pulling down news from one source, which is a lot. So I'm talking about being the Amazon of, I want all the news sources, right? And you'll notice that as I did that, right, there's all the Giants news. And today's,
I just want to know like the general vibe of him, right? I do this all the time with Google. I search things.
who you want to pull up? You want to pull up May?
Or Jackson Dart.
Okay, Dart. All right.
You'd pull up if you know like Lane Kiffin's decision to leave Ole Miss affected crop prices in Mississippi yesterday.
We can do that actually. All right. So there's all the news on Jackson Dart, right? So here's all the news, and by easily I can pull it up, and hopefully you can see that. And now, not only did I want to be able to do that, but I want to show you where the data came from. So, and it'll pull up the data so I can share this tab instead. And there's the data. Now I can copy and paste and do all the fun things that you normally want. And is he good? You didn't get. How long would it take you to go to Fox Sports and pull up all that data, right? I want to do it so it's quick and you get off of it and you can think about it in other ways, right? So I'm going to go back to the data. Now we know that that you're interested in this, right? Now I've also built the machine where you don't even need the widgets. We'll just go ahead and I'll build the AI out. So we'll go ahead and pull that AI out for you. And I'll pull up the AI. Sorry about that. AI. And as I pull up the AI, there we go. And we're going to do that. I'm going to attach that actual database, right? So in this case, there's sports. So I'm going to pull up football, right? And I'm going to apply that. All right. So I'm now just only going to look at football. All right. How good is Jackson Dart? And now we want to create a prediction markets, right? I want to understand that because why? Gamblers are gambling. So I want to know, and I want to know based on the news, what the news thinks about it, not just what I'm thinking about. I want to think about it from the perspective of all those people that I'm actually going, all right, Jackson is a highly skilled quarterback, right? Now, I don't just want to know the answer to this. I want to know why it's predicting that, right? So they're saying it's leadership. Okay, great. But as it's answered the question, if you can't see it, I'll blow up my screen so you can see it, make it easier for you.
Yeah, that's all good. Yeah.
Okay. And now, but they're saying overall, Jackson is portrayed as promising and as a developing quarterback. So they're not saying he's great yet. He's a promising and developing quarterback. All right. So now I've asked that question, and I know that question. So let me just ask this one more question. What team is he better at playing against, right? I don't just want to know, is he a good quarterback? I want to know, is he good in the rain? Is he good in the snow? Is he good at slants? How good is he at pass protection? And oh, sorry. I should have put Jackson in there. My bad.
Got it. Yeah.
That's my fault.
No, I totally understand how that happened. We build these things ourselves. Yeah, like it just lost the context. Just say Jackson Dart. I am curious what it would say though, because this is like a benefit of AI.
Okay, so we'll put it in the right way.
I have a result. I have found it to be very good at this. Like it's very good at analyzing football stats and being like, before I watched the A&M UT game, I was like, how might UT beat us? And it laid out exactly how they beat us.
Yeah.
Efficiency, right?
And I was like, dang.
So there's like now the Philadelphia Eagles have demonstrated strong defensive capabilities because he's not good against defense. right? So that's what I wanted to build. I wanted to create an AI that didn't just give me the answer, but lay it all out for me and then give me an answer to a question I didn't even know to ask.
This is super interesting, Stephen. I think, these highly focused, like specific intelligence made accessible to people so that they can have better access to the financial markets makes a ton of sense. Whether it's sports and I like these like second order tertiary effects that people like might not know how to interpret or like see through the noise to
Well, here's a good example
understand.
of that. The Federal Reserve, Powell, said he wanted to spend time and understand the data on how tariffs were going to affect the world and the markets. I could have told you that, did it in 17 seconds. It's taken him 6 months, 8 months now, right? To understand that. He was wrong. And now he's changed his tune. What if I could have helped him out a lot better and given them the better data, right? When the data went down because the government didn't have the data, I used alternative. I already had alternative data already in the system. When I already knew that manufacturing was going down, I knew PMI numbers were going to be down. Even when I even knew about the curve in jobless rate was exacerbating, right? Because I wasn't just using the same data they were. I'm using all of the data. If you're using one data set to give you one answer to one problem, to one question, you're not getting a well-rounded answer. And I want a well-rounded answer.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
No,
It
absolutely.
makes a
Yeah.
ton of sense.
And that's kind of the beauty of like this. I've taken to calling these types of businesses like, and there's not a lot of them to be clear. Like, there's not hundreds of thousands of people building this, but just like this idea of like a context machine. Like, depending upon who you're trying to serve, it's like you're bringing together all of the things they need to know, which
And
would have
telling
been
you where it
overwhelming
came
in the
from,
past.
not
Yeah,
making it up, not hallucinating, time stamping it, telling you how it affected you right then and there because it may change in the future, change the data may be different. All of those things that AI can't do. And it's not one AI. Right now, the AI companies are fighting each other. I want them to come together. If we had AIs coming together as an ecosystem, holy shit.
right. But then it's still like next week could be we got to switch this whole thing to Claude because it's way better. It's like
Yeah.
I remember OpenAI was the best, right? But then it became Perplexity. You know what? I don't want to do that. And right now, OpenAI is saying code red, right? He's saying code red, code red. We've got to get better, right? I'm not trying to
it'll
make 3D
stabilize.
grass.
It'll stabilize when they get the data centers built, in my opinion.
That's exactly right,
I
and
think
that's
that's all
why
it
data
is.
centers are important. That's right.
Right? Because right now it costs too much, and it's like most things in computing are built around the assumption it doesn't
But in
cost
the
too much.
future, it'll be cheap as heck.
Yep.
Right? And if that causes a bubble of the companies that bought the computers, that's not really my problem. I'm just trying to use them. And
Hmm.
if the cost goes way down, there's still huge opportunities for lots of people. Maybe not the
3
guy
years
that
ago, people told me that the future was laptops and iPads. I agree with them. I have an iPad. I got a laptop. I've got several, right? But it's still computers. It's still have. Guess what? The number one thing is ask Michael Dell why he was able to donate $6.8 billion this week, right?
I
Because
just saw that.
computers. Because we need computing, right? If you're just trading on a laptop or mobile phone, you're not winning the game. I promise you, right? You may win a few battles, but you'll never win the war because it's the people that have the stronger Nvidia cards, that have the stronger AI cards in the future, will be the ones that have the winning combination because they'll be able to compute that data faster than you can.
Yeah, certainly. Besides that kind of call to action, as somebody who started young in this space, you've been involved in really cool stuff over the past 30 years, from the White House to, being involved in the markets, et cetera. Now on your, with Quasar. What other like advice, would you give to young people or aspiring investors, entrepreneurs? Like, I agree completely that most are going to invest in like a desktop server that's just an edge node that helps them access inference faster. Like, you might have your phone, but you're always going to have some kind of compute locally that then also, you can use remote
Well, I think the
inference. Like,
future is fog, right? I think we'll be buying data from the cloud eventually, fog, right? I don't need the fog all the time, so I'm going to buy $20 worth this month, and I don't need it next month. That's by the way, that's the India way of doing things, by the way, right? When people ask me all the time as a new trader or a new person coming up, but no matter what you're doing in life, right? No matter what you are, who you are, you're a doctor, you are a ditch digger, whatever it is, you are an investor first and foremost. Whether you pay taxes, you're an investor, right? Doesn't matter. You're an investor. Get a mentor. the biggest key to anything in life is being mentored by someone smarter than you. I mean, the people that are around me, I say it every day. When I find someone smarter than me, I try to hire them because I want to. I tell people all the time, I want you to pass me up in this world, and you will eventually. And I look forward to that day. My mentor told me the same thing. Today I had 25. People say, "Well, who's your mentor?" I got 25 mentors, right? I know every single one of them personally until he passes away. Some of them have, and some of them I keep in close contact. But if you want to be a doctor in this world, go find a doctor and be mentored by a doctor. If you want to be mentored in the world of finance, go find someone who has a PhD level in economics to mentor you. Don't find someone on YouTube that has absolutely no idea about the world of markets. Just because somebody has 1 million followers does not make them great at finance. It makes them good at marketing. Hire them to be a marketer. And I do. But don't hire them to teach you how to do the trade, right? That's a recipe for disaster, right?
Certainly.
Learn from the people.
Apply that to everything more than finance too.
Everything in your life.
Go find someone good for everything.
Now, I think my wife probably wishes my mentor was Betty Crocker or somebody who helps me clean the house and all that. But look, let's be real honest. If you want to be a surgeon, you're not going to ask a plumber how to be a surgeon, right? And you're not going to learn from ChatGPT how to be a surgeon. So,
well, maybe, but I don't know how good you'd be.
You might be a field medic. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, it's fantastic. I absolutely I'm appreciative of the time that you guys have brought me on here, and I really appreciate the podcast.
Thank you so much. Hey, listeners and watchers, wherever you are in the world, I just wanted to leave a brief message for you and say thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If you made it to the end of this episode, I just want you to know that we wouldn't be here without you, and we appreciate your time and attention. It's our mission to get beyond the headlines and bring access to amazing advancements in artificial intelligence to everyone. We have amazing plans for 2026. We're not going anywhere. We're going to keep doing our work at Black Flag Design. We're going to keep doing our work here at AI DIY with the podcast. We're pursuing partnerships with Vanta, Deal, mission critical business systems that we use every day. We're also pursuing partnerships with coding assistants and trying to spread the word about how amazing these tools are. So I hope everybody has an amazing conclusion to the year. We might have a couple bits of content coming out prior to the new year, but just wanted to leave you with a message of thanks and personal gratitude.